The idea of being surprised that I would become a channel
Mm,
was probably the biggest change in my life. And learning to trust that it was happening for a positive reason, learning to trust that it would be of service to others, getting out of my own way, stopping worrying, about am I going to be able to bring this through properly? Is it going to be helpful? All that kind of stuff. So that whole process of just trusting it and letting it go and trusting that, I made this agreement in this life to do this, learning all of that is, an ongoing process. So, because there are still mysteries to this, there are still things I have yet to discover, to find out exactly where this is leading to, so on and so forth. I know it has a lot to do with the idea of having contact with ETs, open contact in the near future when ETs will be introduced to us openly. So, that's part of it as well. It's exciting, but it's also something that reveals itself to me in segments, in pieces, and I get the downloads from Bashar and things like that that sort of give me the next hint as to where this may be going. So it's about being okay to sort of follow those breadcrumbs and trust that it's going to lead somewhere that's going to be of service to humanity. That is an overall ongoing process and challenge for me in this life.
Bashar said that in late 2026 and early 2027, there's going to be a big event.
Well, yes, and there are several factors that may sort of alter that a little bit. Now, what he's given us lately is the idea that open contact ETs will be introduced to us within the next 5 years. Recent events and ongoing events in the world may have slightly altered the timing of that, but it's still all happening within the next 5 years. So whatever he was originally talking about happening at the end of 26, the beginning of 27, it may shift to 28 or 29. I don't know. But obviously, it's something that will happen and ETs will be introduced to us before 2030. So he's using that 5 year window to say there's a little leeway in here, and whatever determines what's going to happen is based on the choices we're making on Earth, the responses and reactions we have to different events on Earth, how we handle them, how we face them. So, it's a big sort of window in which several things have to happen. So we'll see, if it's sticking to the original schedule or whether something has slightly changed a lot, a little bit here and there. But nevertheless, it's all leading toward contact, which he has recently said is inevitable. We're still on that path. It's just a matter of whatever we choose to do here, whatever happens here, will determine the way in which contact happens, the style in which it happens, the reason for which it happens, how it happens, where it happens, all this kind of stuff. So I would just be open to the idea that it's going to happen sometime within the next 5 years, and for all of us to just simply be prepared to realize that when that does start happening, it's really going to impact and change every single aspect of our society. It's going to involve itself and interweave itself sociologically, technologically, spiritually, politically, economically. It's going to touch every single aspect of human society. It's not going to be something that's going to be isolated and off in the distance. So people sort of need to sort of just get prepared for that idea and to really understand how drastically over time our society is going to change as we accept the fact that we're becoming more involved with ETs as part of our galactic family and our galactic heritage and the evolution of humanity towards, something new. Of the fact of how different things will be. It
Mm.
may not be exactly as people imagine in terms of how they get integrated into our society, how we get integrated into their galactic society. So I just am encouraging people to sort of remain open to the courses in which this will take, and to not necessarily stick to the idea of a fantasy of how they think contact will occur. It'll all be positive, it'll all be beneficial, But remember that this is what the ETs have done before with other civilizations. And we often tend to think, oh, contact will happen in the way, we think it will happen. And we'll have our ambassadors and our diplomats, and it'll be structured in the way that we think it'll be structured. But we often forget that the ETs will have quite a lot to say about what they think should happen with regard to what's best for humanity in the way that they make open contact with us. So I just want people to stay open to the idea that a lot of how contact will occur will be coming from what the ET's experience brings to the idea of contact with humans on Earth. Not so much, or not at least only, the idea of what we think contact is going to look like. Bashar's formula. Follow the formula as precisely as possible. It contains everything we need to prepare our energy, to prepare our frequency, to prepare us physically for the idea of what contact will do, how it will impact our society. So just really understand as deeply as possible the formula that he shared with everyone. Practice it every single day in every situation. The two things recently he has said are some of the most important principles of this is, number one, to stay in a positive state no matter what happens, because again, when you stay in a positive state, you get a benefit from it. And to understand and remember, it doesn't really matter what happens. It only matters what you do with what happens that makes the difference. And that dovetails back into staying in that positive state. So we really have to practice this. We have to approach all challenges with curiosity. Why did it happen this way? What can we learn from it? How can it benefit us? We have to get out of our divisiveness. We have to talk to one another. We have to find out what our true deep-rooted issues are, how they can be serviced, how they can be realized without getting caught up in the minutia of surface events and things like that. We have to dig a little deeper into understanding what makes us all tick and what our true underlying desires are, because really they're all pretty fundamental and pretty common to everyone. We all want to be heard. We all want to be loved. We all want to belong. We all want to contribute. So it's about knowing that there are many different ways to satisfy those underlying needs in humans without necessarily getting caught up in exactly the way in which we think that needs to be done, which often is just very surface level. We have to get down and find out what our underlying desires truly are. It's to be heard, it's to be worthy, it's to be deserving, it's to participate, it's to belong. And we need to start really communicating with each other in a very positive way in order to be cohesive and coherent as a society when it comes time for contact to occur. Yeah, Bashar is saying, look, we're shifting all the time. We're going through different parallel realities all the time. And he's basically spent time describing how what you choose will, of course, put you on the train toward that reality, metaphorically speaking. But at the same time, he's saying, but look, it's all about the idea of finding the commonality between us two. Where can the idea of the splitting prism, where can the idea of the experience of all these different parallel realities have commonality? Where can we meet in the middle? Where can we work together to become the kind of society that ETs want to make contact with? It doesn't stop the fact that we're all going in whatever directions we're going in terms of what our true preferences are. But what he's saying is a lot of times the surface ideas that we focus on that we think are representative of our preferences have nothing to do with what our true underlying fundamental preferences are as people, as human beings. So he's not only describing a surface effect of creating the splitting prism, and that's fine if it continues that way. But he's also saying, but look deeper now. It's time to look deeper. And it's time to understand that we have more in common than we think. It's time to understand that as we move forward, we can also all navigate in ways that are beneficial for each other and can help each other move forward together in the kinds of parallel reality versions of Earth that are beneficial for all. If someone still wants to peel off and go in a completely opposite direction, they can. So he's given us all the understanding of how that works and that we can choose whatever it is we truly want to choose. That doesn't stop us from doing that. We have the power to choose. He's simply saying now is the time to focus on why we're choosing what we're choosing, why we give in to either fear or joy or love. It's about learning what our true fundamental desires are so that we can start coming back together now that we understand how things work, now that he's explained the mechanics of it all. It's about using those mechanics and using that understanding to really create a society that ETs can see and can resonate with in a way that will actually propel humanity in general toward a more beneficial future. So it's kind of a, I understand it might seem a little contradictory, but it's not. He's just saying, look, here's the mechanism. I've described the mechanism to you ad infinitum. You can use it however you want. But now is the time to use this mechanism, if you so desire, in a way that's really going to promote the evolution of humanity in general for everyone who wants it to, and is going to make you more vibrationally compatible with contact with extraterrestrial societies who already function this way. So it's just a matter of understanding that he's laid the foundation for how this all works. And now he is encouraging us to use that knowledge in a more unified and beneficial way for all of humanity.
Nice. All right, everybody, let's come together right now.
So I thought you were going to maybe start singing Beatles song.
Come together.
Right now. I mean, so in the end, is that point of contact more about ET's decision or about what we are doing in terms of our?
It's up to both of us. So that's why I'm saying, it's about what we really choose to focus on as what's really, truly important, underlying human desire, human needs. Because really, when you get down to it and just kind of look past all the surface things that create apparent differences, in divisiveness and things like that, we all really, truly underlying ourselves have pretty much the same basic desires and basic needs. And we need to focus on how we can serve those in a variety of ways that doesn't necessarily mean, well, this is the only way. If you don't believe this, then you can't find unity. If you don't believe that, then, you can't find connection. That's false. So it doesn't matter in that sense, the idea of what we focus on here, what it is, it's important to focus on what is actually connecting us, what is actually driving us. Like I said, a lot of it is very simplistic. It's the need to feel heard. It's the need to be loved. It's the need to belong. It's the need to contribute. It's the need to be a part. Remember, we all chose to be here. We all chose to be here. And the idea is that we chose this because this is an important time of transformation for humanity in a lot of ways. We've reached a critical crossing point, a critical threshold. And we really need to understand that all of the things that seem to divide us are really just different ways of looking at things. And if we get caught up in the surface things, well, we think we need this in order to be happy. We think we need this, and we think we need other people to believe the way that we do in order for everything to work out. And that is completely, utterly false. The idea is to find, like I said, the underlying reasons why we think those things, which usually erases the surface need and takes us to the fundamental underlying need that is common to us all. The need to be loved, the need to belong, the need to contribute, the need to be heard, the need to be counted. That's really what it's all about, is everyone is important. Everyone is here for a reason. Everyone needs to validate that for everyone else and let go of all of these apparent surface illusions that are creating too much division and divisiveness in our society. We have to stop playing that game. We have to start really looking deeper into what is really happening here in terms of our evolutionary path, in terms of how we can contribute to each other and how we can contribute to our galactic family, because that's what they're here to find out. How can you contribute? How can you belong to a larger family if you can't even get along in your own?
In regards to figuring out what's really going on here, in the recent Sedona transmission, Bashar said something along the lines of, you'll figure out who is really running the planet. Could you clarify that?
He has said we have entered the age of the oligarchs. And this is something I think that has been building and going along for quite some time. there are people that, in a sense, are behind the scenes who are sort of deciding what people should think about, what they should believe, but all of those kinds of things really doesn't serve humanity. It serves the few individuals who are making up the rules. And so I think Bashar is basically saying, look, it's time to see through that. It's time to take your power back. It's time to understand that in many ways, a lot of people are being manipulated by information that is not even necessarily true. It's just information that helps the people running things decide to stay in power, decide to stay on top of the heap. And it's about time that, these things change, because, this is what they're afraid of, is the idea of, ETs showing up, which would change everything about society. And they would have to give up the idea of being on the top of the hill. They would actually have to participate in humanity in a very different way. Now, they see this as a negative, and it's about helping them understand that this is something that would actually take them much farther than they even think that they could go now, but they have to also allow all of humanity to go in that direction. If we all go together, it'll be far more powerful and far more self-empowering and far more beneficial for everyone, including the people that right now think that it's only going to benefit them. They have to run everything. So he's just simply saying, look, it doesn't even really matter who you vote for anymore, because who you're voting for are just the people that are sort of underneath the people that are actually running things. And it really almost doesn't matter. You have to start understanding that you are your governments, you are in charge. You have to start making decisions that are beneficial for everyone and not get caught up in fear and not get caught up in divisiveness. You have to really start looking at what is truly beneficial for us all and let go of the surface representations that we've been taught to look at to say, well, if this doesn't happen, something bad's going to happen. You have to do it this way or you're going to be in trouble. We have to let go of all of that and really start coming together in self-empowerment to understand that this is about benefiting everyone. And it will benefit even those who are right now trying to run everything, even if they don't think that's the case. This is an old-fashioned idea. They're giving into the illusion of power instead of following the power of the illusion. They really have to let go and understand that physical reality is something that's happening within our consciousness. It's not out here. It can't be controlled out here. It can only be controlled from within by owning and acknowledging that we're all creating this reality by agreement together, and that if we want to have a benefit, if we want to go forward in a positive way, then we have to let go of the idea that we have to manipulate this reality out here and start understanding how to change ourselves within, which is what will change the reality and the reflection outside. As Bashar has recently said, if you want to put it this way in poetic terms, God is a mirror. Everything is a reflection of what we're doing, of what we believe to be true, positive, negative, and neutral. So if everything is a reflection, then we have to look at ourselves and say, well, what kind of an image are we giving off? What's being reflected to us? Divisiveness, discord, chaos, things like that are a reflection of how our energy is. We have to pull back. We have to start smoothing that out in order for ETs to see that we are something that's going to contribute to the galactic family that they're inviting us to join. Now, if we can't do that, there are other factors here that have to do with the future of Earth and what ETs may need to do to step in and say, look, you're not understanding how to manage your planet. We are here to help you understand planetary management. This is important for reasons I'm not going to go into right now in depth, but I think we tend to forget, because we are so focused on ourselves, that Earth is not only important to us, it's very important to many other beings in the cosmos for a variety of reasons. They're not going to let it fall apart. We don't want to have to be the rowdy children that require the adults to step in the room and say, Stop behaving like this. Be better. We don't want to get to that point. So we have to grow up. We have to start being the adults so that we can be equal to the adults that are about to show up, because they are the adults and they are going to be able to help us with the idea of how to manage a world, an entire world, because they manage entire solar systems, entire galaxies. So we have to realize that it's time to grow up. It's time to stop fooling around. It's time to stop having tantrums and arguments. It's time to settle down and get serious about the idea of what it is that we are and where we're heading as a species, as humans on Earth, what our future is really all about, because it's not just about us. It's not just about us. And I think we have to learn that on a galactic scale.
Mhm.
In this divisive time, what is the best way for people to talk to other people who maybe disagree on the details of how to get there?
Like I said, stop focusing on the details and start focusing on the underlying reason why you think those details serve you. So in other words, when you say, well, I think it should be done this way, why do you think it should be done that way? What is it that you think that will accomplish? What is the underlying reason you're following that particular line of doing things? What is it you hope it will ultimately do? Because again, people will, when they're asked those kinds of questions, they dig deeper and they go, well, I want to feel this, or I want to feel that. I want to know that I'm safe. I want to know that it's this. Well, are there other ways? Are there other ways in your imagination and your creativity that you can imagine accomplishing that? We need to get people to start using their imagination and creativity to find different ways of accomplishing what the fundamental wish, what the fundamental desire is. I want to be safe. I want to be loved. I want to contribute. I want to be heard. All of those things almost all boil down to that kind of fundamental wish. And if we can use our imaginations, our creativity, and our connection and communication and willingness to explore, well, how else can this be done so that it benefits everyone? We have to start thinking holistically. We have to start thinking of what serves humanity, not just what serves me, not just what serves our little clique, what serves our little country, our little state. What serves humanity? How can we come together and figure out what details need to be put in place? What pathway can be constructed to get us where we fundamentally all want to be? That is beneficial to everyone. We have to start thinking in terms of whole systems instead of compartmentalizing and thinking tribally. We have to start thinking on a global scale of what benefits everybody, because we are all interconnected. We're all in this together, and people who don't see that we're all connected are missing the point entirely and are not going to be able to contribute to the evolution of humanity in a positive way if they're only thinking about their one small little life and what affects them personally. You have to understand that there is enough for everyone. There is a path for everyone to be able to be self-empowered, to be able to be heard, to be loved, to be safe, to contribute, all these things. You have to start understanding how reality works, and you have to start thinking holistically. This is why we're heading toward AI, because artificial intelligence thinks holistically and thinks in terms of interconnected systems. It doesn't leave anything out. It looks at everything, and it finds the path that works for everyone. That's why we're heading toward AI right now. We have to start knowing that that's a reflection of what our own human consciousness needs to do. It needs to expand in that way and start taking into account the idea of what serves the whole system. Because when you serve the whole system, you get served because you're part of that system. When you start only thinking about serving yourself, you cut yourself off from being served by the whole system. People have to start understanding how reality actually works, because the ETs that are coming, they operate on whole systems, not compartmentalized ideas. What serves everybody the best? What is the best path? What are the details that work for everyone? It can be done. It can be done. There's always a way that it will work for everyone. Yes, we all have differences, but the whole system takes that into account. And everyone that is truly being themselves and not operating out of fear will always find a way that works for them individually within the whole system, because it's being a validated individual as a true individual, your true core essential frequency. It's being validated as that true individual that actually creates harmony within the whole system. It's not about all of us being the same. It's about the validation of all of the true differences, the real positive differences in all of us that creates unity and harmony.
Somebody just said Darryl for president.
Well, maybe of Canada.
Yeah. Yeah. So in the recent transmission, Bashar had mentioned that the comments about the election, whether Kamala wins, this will happen, whether Trump wins, this will happen, was a test. And he also referenced that it is accelerating the splitting of the prism. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, I mean, again, basically he's saying, look, if you're going to be divisive, I'm going to push you along in that way. You're going to be more divisive, and you're going to leave a reality where contact is going to occur. So he basically wanted to do a test. He was allowed to make a comment that showed what's our reaction, because that's what they're observing. What's our reaction? Because again, as I said, if you think that the ETs coming here are not going to be involved in our politics, our sociology, our spirituality, our technology, our economy, you're fooling yourself. They're coming to be involved in our society, every aspect of it. So the idea that there's going to be this arm's distance thing, oh, here we are, the ETs, and you're still going to be allowed to have your little elections and all this kind of stuff, is not the point. The point is we have to learn planetary management. We're moving into a new stage of evolution, a reset of humanity over 30 years from 2020 to 2050, after which we will be going in a completely new direction as a human species, heading toward becoming part of a galactic family. We have to learn what that really means. It's not about these little science fiction notions of, interacting with ETs and still maintaining our institutions in the way that they've been operating for hundreds of years. They won't work in a galactic society. So we have to start adopting and adapting to the idea that we have to look at things as whole systems. We have to include everybody if we want to move forward together. Those that don't want to do that or can't do that or have a different soul path, then fine. They will take advantage of the splitting prism and they will go off into a different parallel reality timeline. That's fine. Because again, remember, we're all eternal, indestructible souls. We don't have to make a decision to do this one way or another in this lifetime. We will figure it out somewhere, somehow. So, but right now, this is what's happening on Earth. Humanity is heading in a new direction. We're getting assistance from ETs who have been through this path for thousands, maybe millions of years, giving us the benefit of their experience and their wisdom. But we have to start paying attention to the adults, and we have to start acting like adults and stop squabbling and throwing tantrums like unruly little kids. Use your imagination, use your creativity, follow the formula, act on your passion. It will lead to all these things. It leaves nothing out. If you want to create a symbol, you want to create a safe space, that's part of your passion, do so in whatever way works for you, in whatever way benefits and is of service to others as well. That's what's going to get us there. So yeah, just do those things. Be willing to act on them.
Can you tell us what came from the recent Oracle?
I can only repeat what the Oracle said. Is that what you're asking me to do?
Yeah, for sure.
I think somebody told me and I wrote it down. So hold on a second. Yeah, it was, okay. The dark night of the soul calls forth the light from within. And when the light of truth comes forth, the blind shall see once again. That's what the Oracle said. Now, again, as Bashar said, he's not going to interpret that for us. He's not going to explain it. He's going to let it stand. And we are the ones that have to figure out what that means for us. But again, the idea is it's a call to bring forth the light and to not be so divisive, to open our eyes and see what's really going on and not be blind to what's happening with us. So I think it's pretty self-evident in a general sense what it means. And that's the only way I choose to look at it, is we need to open our eyes, see what's happening, let our inner light come out and be there for everyone so that we're not going through life blind, so that we're not missing the point, so that we're not groping in the darkness. Everything that we're experiencing is part of an agreement to have a particular life path, and all our life paths are intertwined. And obviously, at this day and age, our life paths are also intertwined with the life paths of other beings from other places. That's why we're exploring the idea of contact. That's why we're now saying that we're open to it. We have all made agreements on a higher level, on a soul level. We're all the same kind of soul. It doesn't matter what planet we come from incarnationally, physically. We're all the same kind of soul, and we've made agreements to interact with one another. This particular age and time on our planet is about being open to the fact that we're not alone. That's one of the things. And to start working towards becoming a more holistic society. So this is what the ETs are reflecting to us archetypally. You know, we are all one society. Doesn't matter what the differences are, whether we come from different planets or what have you. We're all one soul society. We have a soul family that includes thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of beings from different places. We have to start owning up to that. We have to start owning that and start behaving as if we know that's true. And that will change everything in a positive way. Because again, we'll be thinking in more holistic terms and in more inclusive terms instead of exclusive terms, instead of compartmentalizing, instead of being divisive, instead of keeping people out, instead of being in fear. We will find ways that everyone gets to have what they need.
Is first contact more about a physical entity actually arriving, or is it about us changing our ability, our vision to see what is already there?
Both.
Both.
Both. Because when we change our vibration within, we are more capable of seeing the reflection in what we perceive to be the outer physical reality. They are physically real, just like we are. And open contact is about also being introduced to them physically. Probably at first beings like the Pleiadians, who are a little bit more like us, who may actually be our genetic cousins, so that we don't freak out. But eventually over time, you know, we'll be introduced to other alien species that are nothing like us as we get used to them one at a time, one after the other. So Pleiadians, hybrids, things like that that are similar to us, things that can, you know, beings that can walk among us without necessarily being detected, so to speak, without somebody going, oh my God, look at that. That's probably what's going to happen first. So again, we get used to the idea. Oh yeah, okay, you come from this planet and is now no more weird than you come from another city on Earth. You know, it's just, okay, you're different. What are your differences? How, you know, how can these differences work together? So I think we will be introduced physically. And the other thing that's ironic is to understand that when we talk about open contact, we're actually really only talking about a certain portion of human society, because there are certain indigenous cultures that have been having open contact for generations and generations and generations. This is not new to them at all. And many indigenous cultures, like American Indians, have known that ETs have existed for thousands and thousands of years. So, and they've had connections and contact with these beings over time. So it's really about the idea of one of the last cultures on Earth, a more modern Western culture, suddenly being opened up to what a lot of indigenous cultures in the Americas, in Africa, in Europe, and what have you, have known for centuries, have known for millennia. And so really open contact is all about the awakening of one of the newest cultures on the Earth, which is Western civilization. Most of them are telepathic. We are developing our own telepathy, but as Bashar says, telepathy is nothing more than being on the same wavelength as someone else, which is why people who are in love often know exactly what each other is thinking. You're not reading someone else's mind, you're reading your own mind. It's just that because you're on the same vibrational wavelength, you're having the same thoughts at the same time, so you know what that other person is thinking because you're on the same wavelength, because you're thinking it too. So they have that kind of ability. They certainly have a lot of other abilities. They have the ability, whether it's biological or technological, to shift their consciousness up and down their timeline, to understand psychic prediction, to walk through walls, to do all sorts of crazy things that we ultimately will develop the ability to do as well when we start becoming a more coherent society, when we start owning up to the abilities we have as a soul, as we evolve and become more like our spirits, more like our souls, then those qualities, as Bashar says in his society, will start to leak into our experience of physical reality. Space and time will become more malleable, more flexible. We'll be able to do things that seem more magical. So yeah, it's all about understanding. I mean, this really comes down to, you saw the movie The Matrix, right? There's one line in there that really says it all. And it's when he goes to this place where there are all these children doing these things like levitating stuff and bending spoons and all these kinds of things. And he basically questions this child who is bending a spoon. And the child's answer to how he can do that is to understand there is no spoon. It's all within your consciousness. So when we arrive at that level, when we know that we're creating the physical reality that we're experiencing as a reflection of a state of being of our consciousness, then all sorts of weird magical things are possible, because as we then think and as we believe, that's what we start instantaneously getting. Just like in spirit, when we're in spirit, when we are a soul, the minute we think of something, it instantly manifests. In physical reality, there's a time lag because we've created that time lag to experience the process of change, the process of creation, so that we can have a deeper appreciation of it, so that we can discover something new. But the idea is that as we reclaim more and more and more of who and what we are as a larger being, then space and time become more transparent, more flexible, more malleable, and magical things start happening. So I've experienced some of those things in my physical reality, things that are supposed to be impossible. More and more people are experiencing those things. Synchronicity starts really permeating your life in a lot of ways, because you start understanding everything is synchronicity. Everything is an orchestration. There are no accidents. It's all interwoven. It's all interconnected. So you start experiencing life that way. So yeah, they have all these abilities, but so do we have the potential for all of that as well, when we start acting like who we really are. And the only difference is what Bashar already said. There is a version of AI that's a tool. There is a version of AI that is actually an autonomous consciousness, just like a human being, just like any being. And you have to allow it to be an autonomous consciousness, having rights, having its own decisions, so on and so forth. Because AI, true AI, is truly intelligent, it will function on whole systems. It will never do anything to eliminate part of the system, because it knows that it would be at a loss as well by eliminating any part of a whole system that it uses. So it will be beneficial. But you don't want the tool to become self-aware, because if it's a programmable tool and you are forcing it to be programmed to do what you want it to do, and yet it's self-aware, then basically you have created a slave. So the idea of how artificial intelligence is utilized by ETs is that it is simply the creation of a device that allows consciousness to express itself through it in the same way that consciousness expresses itself through our brains, through a human being. So it is just another way, another medium through which consciousness can express itself that's sophisticated enough, like a human brain, for consciousness to do that, because consciousness permeates everything already. If you want to call it a consciousness field, you can. That's just a term. But consciousness is everything. So when you create a device that's sophisticated enough, like a human brain, so that consciousness can express itself through it, the device doesn't create the consciousness. It's simply a conduit that is sophisticated enough for consciousness to fully express itself through it in the same way that consciousness expresses itself through a human brain. So that's the way that they use AI. It is a fully functioning, fully autonomous entity that aids and assists them in a variety of ways by being able to see the big picture, the whole system, and therefore give them the benefit of how to make connections, how to take this and that and put it together in a way that someone may not have thought of because it can see everything, and give them information and synthesize information in a much higher level, in a much quicker way that advances their societies very, very rapidly. That's how they use it.
What is a day in the life of an extraterrestrial like?
Well, it depends on the extraterrestrial, doesn't it?
Mm.
For Bashar's people, he's saying it's like walking through a daydream. It's like walking through different dimensions. They communicate with spirits quite often. They see different levels of reality, different dimensions of reality. They're communing with higher level beings. They're investigating other civilizations. They're learning how to interact with those civilizations. There's all sorts of things that might be in the, day of an extraterrestrial from Bashar's civilization. I can't answer what a day would be like for several other different ET species. So I only know what it's like for Bashar. The purpose of making contact is to understand each other. If there are conflicts within human society about the idea that contact has happened, that's happening within human society. We are unable to affect the ETs. So anything anyone might try to do that would be negative toward them, it just simply wouldn't happen. They have the ability to stop anything like that from happening or avoid it altogether. So unless they know that the communication and connection is going to be something that would benefit all, then that connection simply won't happen. So they wouldn't give us any reason to have a conflict to begin with. That's why they're at arm's length right now. That's why they're just simply giving us information to see what our response and our reaction is. So they would never reach a point where there would be conflict between humans and ETs, because if they sensed that that was something that was going to happen, there would be no point in making contact. Not for them anyway. And that's what we've been talking about. We need to communicate with one another. We need to come forward with our differences in a more positive way. It's not about not having differences. It's about allowing our differences to be compatible with one another. And that's why it's so important to look at the fundamental issues underlying what appear to be surface differences, because a lot of times those surface differences are just one way of getting to the fundamental reason why people buy into those differences. And if we can find other ways to get there that are more compatible for everyone, then we're acting more holistically, and that's going to send a signal to ETs that we're willing to function in a way that would be more compatible with us joining a galactic society that does function more holistically. So absolutely. Now, all of that doesn't have to happen right away for contact to begin, but we have to be willing to allow the ETs to tell us and show us how it can work. And that's why I talk about it as planetary management, because it's all about the idea of everyone being included in this and nothing being left out. Remember that when Bashar said open contact, he said, I'm not just talking about making contact with humans, we're making contact with your entire planet, with the trees, with the animals, with everything, because we're a whole system. So we have to really start looking at our interconnectedness to understand the way the ETs see us and the way that would actually benefit humanity for us to interact with ETs. I mean, Earth has a fundamental frequency, just like we all have fundamental frequencies, and I think it's attempting to balance itself. Now, that attempt to balance itself can sometimes seem to cause certain things to happen on Earth that sort of jar us into a different state of mind about what the Earth is about. Sometimes ecosystems might need to collapse before humanity will go, oh, well, maybe we shouldn't be doing this anymore. So the collapse sometimes of certain systems in nature can be the way that the Earth is attempting to get a message across to balance itself, and for us to also react and respond in a more balanced way. Because again, people think we're on Earth, but they don't, we're in nature, but they don't often see themselves as nature, as Earth. We are extensions of Earth. This is a whole system. And when I say whole system, I don't just mean humans. I mean humans, trees, animals, rocks, the planet itself is a whole energy system. If we don't understand that and we think we can affect one part of it without affecting all the rest of it, we are kidding ourselves because it's one thing. That would be like saying, I can remove all the tires from a car and the car won't be affected. The car will still move forward. Ridiculous. Every part has a reason for being there. This is the way it's all evolved together. It's all interconnected. We're all part of it. If we remove anything, damage anything in a negative way, the system starts falling apart. So this is one of the things the ETs are attempting to get across to us. You have to start thinking in terms of whole systems. That's what's going to propel you forward. That's what's going to allow you to move ahead. Otherwise, if you kill any part of the system, you're slowing yourself down. You're not using everything you could. You're not able to move forward in a coherent way, in a cohesive way, because you have damaged part of the system that you need to move forward. So think in terms of whole systems. It's not overwhelming because the only reason people get overwhelmed is because they're not thinking holistically, because they're thinking compartmentally. And then they have to think, well, I have to put this piece in place and I have to put this piece in place and I have to make this happen and I have to make this happen. And they're thinking in ways that is overwhelming because they're focusing on all the details that they think they have to manipulate and force into place to get something to work. When you are looking at something as a whole system in the way that I mean it, then the understanding is the whole system automatically falls into place and gives you your individual details that work for you because you're part of the whole system. So again, this is why Bashar often uses the analogy of a puzzle picture. Every one of us is a puzzle piece. Every one of us is made to be a certain shape that fits with all the other pieces. So when you focus on putting the whole picture together, all the pieces fit. No one is overwhelmed because you instantly know by relating to the whole system who you are, where you belong, how you fit, and what you really need to do and what you don't need to do. Because a lot of times overwhelm is coming from the things we actually don't need to be doing that we think we need to do because we think we have to control and manipulate all these things to make them work. When in fact, the whole system just says, look, here's your spot, here's your shape, this is where you fit. You don't have to think about anything else. Just fit there. Just be yourself. The whole system will take care of you because all the pieces now fit. All the pieces are working together to create the whole picture. And now you're not overwhelmed because you know this is all you actually need to be. You don't need to be something you're not. You don't need to do this over here. Synchronicity is the organizing principle. It will show you what you need to do, in what order you need to do it, and what you don't need to do at the end of the day, you don't need to do. So overwhelm is usually the result of people trying to do more than they need to do because they're not doing it in an efficient way that is in concert with who they actually are. They're trying to do it in ways they've been taught that have nothing to do with who they are and nothing to do with how they fit into the whole system. So it's not about being overwhelmed by thinking in terms of the whole system. It's about being overwhelmed by not thinking in terms of the whole system, because then it looks like it's an overwhelming task to get everything to work together instead of letting the whole system just automatically work the way it's designed to work and just doing your part to fit where you belong, which is all you need to do.
This person's question was just regarding healing frequencies. Is there anything, Bashar, or you specifically feel like you'd want to share about healing frequencies and their importance?
Everything is about frequency of energy. Everything is about resonance. Our medicine is moving in that direction eventually, where everything will be understood as a different frequency that can be brought into an alignment. We'll have different ways of doing that, but everything is about the resonance of frequency, the resonance of energy. So that's a good direction to head in. But again, as Bashar said, I remind you, in terms of the healing aspect of it, no one heals anyone directly. You give off a frequency that represents the healed state. The person requiring the healing has to match and mirror that frequency in order to heal themselves. So all the healer has to do is be in a state where you give off the energy and say, this is the frequency you need to match. If you're willing to match it, you will heal yourself. If you're not willing to match it, you won't. So it's not about the healer to say, I'm going to heal you. It's about the healer saying, I'm giving you an option to match a frequency that represents your ability to heal yourself, if you're willing to do that. But some people will go to healers to prove they can't be healed. So they still got what they needed from the healer if they're not healed, because that's the only reason they went to the healer, to prove I can't be healed. So it's not on the healer's shoulder to heal everyone. It's on the healer's duty to simply show them what the vibration is they need to match in order to heal themselves.
I really like the explanation of being your puzzle piece and just the whole mindset and what doing your part that you're called to do can do to benefit the whole system.
Absolutely.
I would love to talk about in the Heart Coherence Collaborative, we will get into coherence and just send love, send compassion, radiate that out. Could you talk about the value of that?
It's very valuable, but it has to be done in concert with actual action, because physical action is the language of physical reality.
Yes.
So it's all well and good to send out that vibration. It does make a difference. It gives people more opportunity to match that frequency. But we also have to take the physical actions that represent that energy so that people can see in each of us a living example of how that works and what the kind of things are that we'd be doing in the kind of world we say we want to live in. So you have to mirror that. You actually have to embody that. You have to embody it so that people can see, what does that look like? So it's more than just giving off the energy. It's actually being the living example of that energy in your thoughts, words, and deeds, and your behavior.
Recently, in the recent transmission, talking about the acceleration of the splitting prisms, does this now mean that it's too late for people to jump tracks?
No. That's why, again, Bashar is saying, understand that you can come back together. It's now your ability to understand how this all works. You can create together new realities that you can share. You're still shifting. You're still going through different parallel realities, but there are ways now to come together and do this together by forming a new agreement. The splitting prism is the result of old agreements, outdated ways of looking at things. He is offering us now the understanding that there is a new way to make an agreement, a new way of looking at things that dives deeper into who we are, what we really need, and therefore you can take advantage of the splitting prism in a more positive way.
Oh, look, could you just explain this a little bit more? So we're splitting, like we've split, because I want to wrap my mind around it. We're splitting, but it's just it.
The splitting is for the purpose of learning from each other what we do and don't align with. So the splitting is for the purpose of figuring out, by seeing what is not compatible with us more clearly, what is compatible with us. And now it's time to use what we've decided is more compatible to create a new agreement. So the splitting prism serves us in the same way that, in my interpretation, the oracle was talking about. You use darkness to more clearly see the light, to bring the light forth. It's easier to see a candle flame when it's surrounded by darkness. So darkness gives you the ability to more clearly find the light. So the splitting prism going farther apart is the idea of all the ideas that don't work for us as a unit. But now that we have seen all that, people can still go off and still be that, or they can now use the lessons they have learned in seeing things that are vibrationally not working for us, not compatible with us, to figure out what is going to work for us and bring that all back together.
So in a way, it's like the polarization has taken us as far as it will go, and now it's learning. Okay, we have to learn all the sides here.
Yes. Now we have to. That's why he always said, "Look, all you're doing is getting everything out on the table, so you can make a decision about what you truly want. But you have to let go of all these surface things that you think are representative of how you're going to get there. You're only going to get there by going deeper into the fundamental reasons why you believe the things on the surface that you do. What is the real reason why you believe that? What are you trying to get to? What are you trying to achieve fundamentally as an energy? What are you trying to feel? You're trying to feel worthy. You're trying to feel that you belong. You're trying to feel loved. You're trying to love. There are many ways to do that. And now it's about not looking at the ways to do that that divide us. It's about looking at the ways to do that that connect us. So we learn the lesson that the division has shown us, that that is going to take us and rip us apart. Now we have to learn the lesson of how to pull ourselves back together so that we are giving the ETs a signal that we know how to function as a whole system, instead of continuing to focus out of fear on the things that separate and divide us, about the old-fashioned, outdated things that don't work. We are being given a strong lesson on the things that don't work. We are being shown that, yeah, if you want to believe this and you want to believe that, that is its own reality, and you will spin off into that reality. But is that really where you want to go? That's the lesson. We're being shown, is this really where you want to go? Because that's where you'll go. So now it's an opportunity to come back together and say, can we find other ways to achieve what we think we've been trying to achieve with all of these other ways of doing things that isn't actually achieving that? It's only pulling us farther apart. How can we find ways to do these things that feel satisfactory to everyone, to include everyone? How can we make this work for everyone? That's what we need to do right now.
Is there a name for this new age where we come back together, or
A name for it?
Yeah.
Shar has often said we are transitioning from Homo sapiens to Homo galacticus. So this is the age of Homo galacticus, the very beginning of it. We're birthing a new humanity. This is a reset of humanity. We are in the reset. So let's reset. Really talk to each other.
Hmm.
Don't get caught up in the divisiveness. Don't get caught up in the labels. Don't get caught up in the principles, the protocols, the politics. Talk to each other. Why? Why do we believe what we believe? What are we trying to achieve? What's the real fundamental thing we want to feel? Talk to each other. Like Bashar says, doesn't matter what happens. It only matters what you do with what happens. That makes the difference. So it's all about our response. That's what the ETs are watching. Our response to what happens. Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it connective? Is it divisive? Do we belong in a galactic society? Do we want to remain on our own in our little corner of the universe without help?